Isn't here to hear all that praise because she has different views, but anyway, the good thing is that she's gone off to collect somebody very important, who Marshall Goldsmith is due to come here in about 10 minutes, so we're very honoured to have him here. But before I can introduce Marshall Goldsmith to all of you, which is a great honour, and it was actually a last minute thing from his perspective, and just talking about, you know, giving back to people, just a little bit of story about the background of this whole journey. It kind of started with Marshall 3.5 years ago. I was in Australia, living there, and my career has spanned 25 years in 5 countries, 3 continents. I've done so many different jobs. I started as a lawyer, never the world's best lawyer. I ended up being an in-house lawyer for Dell and Xilinx here. We moved to Australia, ended up being a CEO for an American multinational there. And the last 5 years I've run my own businesses. And I was sitting in a cafe in Perth in Australia 4 years ago, scratching my head as to what the hell do I do with my life next. And somebody said to me, well, and I probably spent about 4 hours boring the pants off this person, told them my life story, and he said, why don't you write a bit of a background, a history of the deals you put together as a lawyer, as a CEO with your own business. So, and I thought he was mad because I wrote a book about 20 years ago and it nearly killed me. But I ended up just scribbling down some notes, and I was thinking, well, nobody knows Simon Haigh. So I went on to LinkedIn. If you ever doubt the power of LinkedIn, it definitely works. I went on to LinkedIn and I looked at some famous people. I thought, can I get somebody famous to write the foreword to this book? And I saw Richard Branson, and I came across this guy, Marshall Goldsmith, who I'd never heard of before. I contacted him on LinkedIn. I thought this was one of those usual corporate LinkedIn communication devices. He actually responded personally. I ended up talking to him. I was in my car at Perth Airport, April 3 years ago, talking to Marshall Goldsmith, asked him if he'd write the foreword to the book. And to cut a long story short, he wrote the foreword to that e-book. And I thought that was the end of the journey. And then 2 years ago, before leaving Australia, I decided to do his program in coaching. Moved back here 2 years ago, and then probably had about 500 coffee conversations with many people. I think Kingsley was one of the first ones. Sean was probably the second one. And you can create a Venn diagram of the conversations that came out of those initial conversations. And what came out of that was this whole journey that I've moved into around deal making, deal closing. And one of the reasons why I asked such a diverse range of speakers, Kingsley and John and Sean, and asked Jason, is everybody here has their own perspective on deal making and deal closing. And some people have negative attitudes. But what I really wanted to kind of demonstrate, particularly from John, is that every day, we're all making deals. Whether we call them deals, sales, bargains, negotiations, conversations, persuasions, influences. We're doing it in our personal life, we're doing it in our relationships, we're doing it at work. Everywhere we're making deals. We're making deals with ourselves, New Year's resolutions, etc., etc. So this whole area is a massive area, and yet it's really untapped from an analysis perspective. A year and a half ago, I just contacted Marshall again, and I said to him, I'm actually now putting together a proper book, a paperback book, would you write the foreword? And without any hesitation, he wrote the foreword. It just goes to show the power of the internet, the power of asking, as Kingsley said, and it's all about deals we make with people. And if you are open and honest and authentic as much as you can be, amazing things can happen. So that's just a little background. I'm not really going to talk about the book too much, other than to say, you know, I just created the 7P methodology. As Sean said, we have a program at Trinity. We're now creating more programs around M&As. We're looking at doing something in relation to China as well. But what I really wanted to do, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my wife isn't here, but I really want to start by thanking Margaret. She'll be here shortly with Marshall. Without Margaret, none of this would have happened. None of these people, none of these next people are here, they're all in Australia, but as I said, I wrote that e-book in Australia. Jeremy Bailey, Cecilia, Jordan, Matt and Niall, they spent ages reviewing over that initial book. Brian O'Kane, who's based here in Dublin, Christmas 2015, when we came back every Christmas from Australia, I sent the initial manuscript to him and he said, you need to get this out. So Brian O'Kane, I really thank, probably above everybody else on this journey with Marshall. Published that book back in 2016. bring it forward to here, I really want to thank Jeff and Mindy, who are over here, for working with me tirelessly to put together various programs, and you've helped me with the Trinity program, hopefully again in May next year. Robbie, who's here, has been creating amazing material. Robbie Caffrey, Deva, where's Deva's there? It's really important to me that I do this because none of this would have happened if I hadn't brought all these people together, and it's just amazing looking at everybody here. Sean, again, thanks. Howard, unfortunately, isn't here. Dermot has been amazing. Dermot, man, I have to say, in terms of humility and in terms of good grace, I mean, a man who ran an airline like Aer Lingus and high-profile character, corporate character, has given so much time to help me along this journey. So I've just met some wonderful people along this journey. Kingsley as well, and you all heard Kingsley. Gill, Carrie, who's here, maybe Gill, put your hand up there, has been really inspirational in this journey, and also Sean as well. We'll talk a little bit about another business. Sean's going to talk about that in a second. So all of these people, and there's more, I really want to thank Trinity College. So I was very proud of the program I put together, and I touted it to a whole load of universities in the UK, in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, here, and Trinity was the first to pick it up. There have been a couple of others now who are very keen, but Trinity College, and the connection came through Sean. We're really now producing a program that I hope will be world-class in its rigor. We're going to bring a lot more quantitative M&A perspective to the program. So Trinity have been phenomenal. Bank of Ireland, and Sean, Kingsley, John, Jason as well for doing this. I want to thank my daughter, Catherine. Where's Catherine? Over there. And Cormac, a Boris friend, for helping us run the catering tonight. I want to thank James Joyce Gin for being here, even though for most of us it seems to be dry January. I want to thank Eugene, who's not here, Justin Caffrey, my good friend, I see you there. Thanks for being here. Jason, as I said, and Joseph Maguire, a great guy sitting at the back there who I know is recovering from a couple of bugs and stuff, so I think you're a bit incubated. Thanks for being here. So this has not been a single journey, although I've spent a lot of time poring over. It's only about 150 pages, so it takes an awful lot of time to put this stuff together, but hopefully this is the start of a journey, and we're moving forward with creating something quite special. So, but most important, I want to thank my wife, Margaret, and my daughters, Catherine and Alice. My younger daughter, Alice, is doing a leaving cert at Leeson Street College, so she's not here. Hopefully she's at home and studying. So a lot of thanks. I've given you a little brief background to it, but what I've put together here is, this is the 7P methodology, which we're using for all the programs we're rolling out. Quantitative and qualitative programs for various different organizations and companies. So principles, planning, power, players, performance, putting it all to bed, payout or post-mortem. I like to make complicated things really simple. So when I thought about putting together the first ebook and then putting together this current book, I'd like to have a methodology. Maybe that's Sean's an engineer and I'm an ex-lawyer, and we like to think in a linear fashion. So what I've tried to do is create a linear methodology. So for example, principles talks about all those key characteristics that we all have in life, that we use in life, like negotiation skills, selling skills. What is value? How do you use value to your advantage? How is that different from money, etc.? Planning. So the second one is planning. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's very, very important in your deals, even if it's a very quick one-off bargain. Also, for example, in relationships as well, you need to plan for things. So that's critically important. Power is the most important thing, and I don't mean using that in a negative sense, but there are different types of power at play in organizations and dynamics, ranging from networking skills to people skills to informational skills to resources skills, and these are all different attributes that fit into power, and this is critically important. I guess overriding all of this, and what I really wanted to demonstrate from this whole program, from the business that we're creating, is that there are individuals who might like to look at power from a negative perspective and use these things to a negative perspective, but from my perspective, true sustainable deals, everything we do in life really is driven by honesty and lack of ego. That's the critically important thing. You might think you're going to get a quick win if you use dubious tactics, but you're always going to get found out. It's human nature, as John said. So try and always You know, they talk in 12-step programs about willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty, but above else, honesty. You know, honesty is critically important in everything we do in life. Personally, professionally, in relation to what we think about ourselves and we do ourselves. So that's really important for me. Players is the fourth P. So this talks about the different sort of players you have in a deal-making scenario. There are all sorts of different players you can have: interpreters, strategists, the deal makers themselves, etc., etc. Then move on to 5, performance, which is the actual deal itself. People call it the M&A process. And then moving on to number 6, putting it all to bed. Dermot has spoken, you spoke at Trinity around this, and you know, some of the key issues, some people would say this is the drier area of deals, but the key issues around governance and risk and closing your deals and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And then finally, payout or post-mortem. You've either done the deal, and that's a great job, or you haven't. And even if you haven't, that can be a good deal. So really that's just an overview, and just to go back, since my wife is back, the biggest thank you is to my wife. And